There was also the time that Wilbur Ross lied to the Supreme Court. As Commerce Secretary, it was Ross's job to oversee the U.S. Census, the population count that the government has to undertake every 10 years because the Constitution says so. Trump administration announced they would add a new question to the census form this year, asking everybody about their citizenship status. That's a question that hadn't been on the census for at least 70 years. And the ACLU, led by Dale Ho, the director of their Voting Rights Project, they took Wilbur Ross and the Commerce Department to court over that, arguing that they were putting that citizenship question on the census because they wanted to drive down response rates in immigrant communities. And that would produce a U.S. population count that was whiter and more Republican, and that would in turn skew the apportionment of congressional seats and the distribution of federal funding toward whiter and more Republican areas, because they counted and less white areas didn't. Wilbur Ross said that was a ridiculous set of allegations. He had merely added the question to the census, he said, because the Justice Department told him to. He was barely involved. But a number of federal courts, eventually the U.S. Supreme Court, found that that was not true. In fact, the evidence showed clearly that Wilbur Ross had decided to add that citizenship question and then afterwards went flailing around trying to find some pretext to justify it, even as more and more evidence emerged showing that the citizenship question was exactly what it appeared to be. It really was straight up a ploy by the Trump administration to advantage white people and Republicans in congressional representation by excluding immigrant communities from the census count. After the Supreme Court blocked the Trump administration from adding that new question to the census, President Trump flat out ordered the Census Bureau to exclude some immigrants from the census count, though it was unclear how they would even go about doing this. Then Trump ordered that the census be ended early, which is a good way to come up with an undercount in among the hardest to reach communities, including immigrants, minorities, and the poor. The people who are hardest to get to, sometimes you don't get to until you've made multiple attempts, so you need more time. You cut the time short, you get less of those people counted. Trump also decreed that the census count had to be delivered to him before the end of his term, so he could approve the count before sending them to Congress, presumably so he could make sure on his way out the door before he was replaced by his successor that the numbers were rigged in the way that he wanted. But that did not happen. The census count did not get delivered to President Trump before he left office. We got the 2020 census count today. And the top line numbers are fascinating, and people will debate the ramifications of these for the next few months. Texas gains 2 seats in the U.S. House. 5 other states gain 1 seat each. 7 states lose a seat, including California, which is losing a congressional seat for the first time ever. New York loses a seat. They thought they were going to lose more than 1 seat. Turns out they only lost 1, and they would have even kept that 1 if only 89 more census forms had been returned from New York State. Lots of interesting stuff there. But the question hanging over all of this is, even if Donald Trump's plan to explicitly rejigger the numbers to exclude some immigrants, even if those explicit plots failed because they got caught, and in lots of cases they were blocked by the courts, do his years of messing with the census mean that these numbers are always going to have an asterisk on them, that they really can't be trusted? When we look at the new census numbers just out today, and they say U.S. population growth is down, way down, down further than it has ever been, except for the 1930s and the Great Depression, maybe that's true. It's totally plausible that that's true. But there's lots of reasons to think this is going to be the big asterisk census in modern American history because of who carried it out, right? This will be the asterisk where we don't know if the count showed a dramatic slowdown in population growth or if the count just showed that the Trump administration didn't really want to count everyone. And so they didn't. And so that's why the population looks smaller. I mean, how are we going to figure this out? We only get a census once every 10 years. We were unlucky enough as a country that 10-year timer went off when this guy was president. Did we get a screwed up census as a result of the fact that it was his administration that carried it out?